Sean Diddy Combs, Andrew Tate, Jeffrey Epstein. They are household names for fame and fortune, but they all share a dark and twisted obsession. Each has been accused of sex trafficking, shattering the stereotype of what that crime looks like.
Today I'm announcing the unsealing of a 3-count indictment, charging Sean Combs with racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, interstate transportation for prostitution. The indictment alleges that between at least 2008 and the present, Combs abused, threatened, and coerced victims to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct.
No kidnapping vans or chained basements were utilized. Instead, the allegations describe a man who weaponized financial power, love, loyalty, and fear over years of a relationship. On July 2, 2025, a jury acquitted Diddy on serious sex trafficking counts. Prosecutors could not prove beyond a reasonable doubt that his treatment of Cassie and another accuser, a woman testifying as Jane Doe, met the legal definition of trafficking. Instead, he was found guilty on 2 lesser counts of transporting individuals for prostitution, avoiding a potential life sentence. Across the Atlantic, former kickboxer and influencer Andrew Tate was arrested in Romania for trafficking, having allegedly lured young women online with promises of romance and wealth, only to entrap them in a webcam sex business through manipulation and coercion.
Have you raped anybody?
Absolutely not.
Have you trafficked anybody?
Absolutely not.
Exploited any women for money?
Absolutely not.
But you have admitted using emotional manipulation to get women to work in the webcam industry for you?
No.
So the chicks would sit there and hit a keyboard that wasn't plugged in. And me and my brother, and eventually some staff I trained, would do all the talking. The girls were just famousers, just laughing and doing this, their titties out. And they were talking to fucking ice cold hustlers. We were taking their money, all of it. And they'd come and say, what kind of, all of it.
And in perhaps the most infamous example, financier Jeffrey Epstein ran an elite grooming ring, recruiting underage girls under the guise of massage sessions and exploiting them within his network of powerful friends. Each case seems different on the surface, one involving a longtime girlfriend in the music industry, another using social media influence to capture victims, and another operating a high society pyramid of abuse. Yet all 3 emphasize a blurring of public understanding about sex trafficking. When abusers are rich or famous, they often don't need to abduct their victims by force. Their power and influence are the cage. In this video, we delve into how high-profile figures like Diddy, Tate, Epstein, and even R. Kelly exploited trust and authority in ways that confuse the public's idea of the definition of trafficking. Sex trafficking isn't always the cinematic horror we imagine. Often, it wears a charming smile, a designer suit, or a friendly online persona. Before we debunk myths, let's establish what sex trafficking actually is. Though definitions vary slightly across jurisdictions, the core principles are consistent. In the United States, federal law defines sex trafficking as the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, or obtaining of a person for a commercial sex act through force, fraud, or coercion. Crucially, if the victim is under 18, any commercial sex is considered trafficking regardless of force or consent. Canadian law likewise criminalizes a broad range of exploitative conduct. Under Section 279 of Canada's Criminal Code, it's illegal to recruit, transport, transfer, receive, hold, conceal, or harbor a person, or to exercise control over their movements for the purpose of exploiting them. Across the European Union, nations align with a shared definition rooted in the Palermo Protocol. The EU's Anti-Trafficking Directive defines trafficking as the recruitment, transport, harboring, or receipt of persons by means of threat or use of force or other forms of coercion, abduction, fraud, deception, abuse of power, or of a position of vulnerability, or giving payments or benefits to control another person for the purpose of exploitation. Sex trafficking is a term that evokes intense images. Kidnappings in dark vans, chains and padlocks, victims snatched from streets. In reality, Many of our assumptions are myths that can hinder recognizing real trafficking around us. Let's debunk a few. Myth 1 is that trafficking usually involves kidnapping or physical force. In reality, most traffickers rely on psychological means, tricking, defrauding, manipulating, or threatening victims, rather than overt violence.
Predators targeting vulnerable girls and women, sometimes as young as 11. They lure them in online and off, flattering them with compliments, praise. You're pretty, you should model. They learn the victim's vulnerabilities. They gain psychological control. They isolate them.
Myth 2 is that human trafficking means sex trafficking, and all sex trade is trafficking. Human trafficking encompasses both labor and sex trafficking. In fact, globally, experts believe labor trafficking, forced work in farms, factories, etc., is even more prevalent than sex trafficking. Focusing on sex alone ignores thousands coerced into other forms of modern slavery. Myth 3 is that traffickers are always strangers or foreign cartels. In reality, traffickers often don't fit the Hollywood villain mold. Many are not shadowy strangers at all. They can be romantic partners, family members, or trusted acquaintances of the victim.
We dated for 6 months, and things got serious very quickly. So he proposed the idea of moving to Vegas, and I thought, oh, he thinks we're a family. He'd gotten us an apartment, and he told me that night, we get dressed up, I want to take you out on the town. And he drove me to a dead-end street instead of to a nightclub. And so he was like, well, this building is an escort service, and you're going to need to sign up. And I thought, escort? That sounds like prostitution. This isn't what I signed up for. And that's when he slapped me across the face.
Myth 4 is that trafficking requires transportation or border crossing. Despite the term trafficking, no movement is required. Trafficking is about exploitation, not transportation. A person can be trafficked in their own hometown, even their own home, without ever crossing a border or leaving their neighborhood. Myth 5 is that if they didn't fight back or asked for help, it must not be trafficking. In reality, victims often don't seek help for complex reasons beyond physical restraint. Many don't perceive themselves as victims while it's happening, due to manipulation or trauma bonds.
One of these girls approached me, and she came up to me and she told me, she's like, hey, I've seen you sleeping out here for a couple of days. I have a boyfriend and I live with him. I know that you're not in a good place right now. Do you want to come stay with us? We walked to her house, and I met her boyfriend, and her boyfriend was named Joker. And there was about 4 or 5 other girls living in the house with us. And I just thought they were all friends and everybody just kind of lived there, and he was just really cool. And he was super nice. He let me live with them. He would take me out to the movies. He would get my nails done. He'd do my hair, and I felt so great. He just kept telling me all the things that I needed to hear. But there was this one day where he had asked me, he was like, we're about to go somewhere. Do you want to come with us? We all went out. We drove to a motel. From that moment, I feel like I started to understand what was going on. So we go into this hotel, and there's another man in there just basically waiting for us. And Joker gets the money from him, and I watch her undress, and I watch her have sex with him. And he had told me, these are what these girls do. And he's like, I'm not asking you to be a part of this. I'm not asking you to lay yourself down with these men, but I am asking you to sit in on all the appointments that we have from now on.
By dispelling these misconceptions, we set a clearer stage. Trafficking isn't always violent kidnapping by strangers, and victims often look free from the outside. Understanding this helps us recognize real red flags and avoid dismissing victims with, "Why didn't they just leave?" type of judgment. So the next question is, what drives someone to become a trafficker, especially those who already have money or status? Number 1 drive is greed and financial gain. Human trafficking is estimated to be a multi-billion-dollar criminal industry worldwide, often ranked just behind drugs and arms in profitability. Unlike a drug that is sold once, a person can be exploited and sold repeatedly. Organized trafficking rings and street pimps alike are often in it for the high profits. For example, Andrew Tate allegedly made a fortune by coercing women to perform on webcams for paying customers. effectively turning their victimization into revenue.
So the chicks would sit there and hit a keyboard that wasn't plugged in. And me and my brother, and eventually some staff I trained, would do all the talking. The girls were just famoosers, just laughing and doing this, their titties out. And they were talking to fucking ice cold hustlers. We were taking their money, all of it. And they'd come and say, well, what kind of, all of it.
Number 2 is power and control. Beyond money, many traffickers are driven by a desire for power over others. There's a certain thrill or psychological reward in dominating a victim, controlling where they go, what they do, even when they eat. This is evident in cases like R. Kelly, who created a whole enterprise to serve his sexual appetites, issuing rules that his victims had to call him daddy, couldn't eat or use the bathroom without permission, and were isolated from family.
And he took the rope tight and he tied my arms behind my back. And then he took my legs and he tied my legs and my hands and arms together. And I just remember laying on the side of the bed crying like, let me go, just untie me, let me go. And he fell asleep with me on the side of the bed like an animal.
In 2005, you filed this order of protection, but then a few weeks later, you withdraw it. Why'd you withdraw it?
Fear. He's a powerful man. At this time, he's at the top of his game.
Sean Diddy Combs, while acquitted of trafficking, was portrayed by prosecutors as someone who derived power from making others bend to his will despite his celebrity. Prosecutors alleged he abused, threatened, and coerced victims to fulfill his sexual desires over decades, and orchestrated events where he controlled and manipulated individuals, using his power to maintain compliance.
The indictment alleges that between at least 2008 and the present, Combs abused, threatened, and coerced victims to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct. As alleged, Combs used force, threats of force, and coercion to cause victims to engage in extended sexual performances with male commercial sex workers.
Number 3 is sexual gratification and sadism. Some traffickers are primarily motivated by their own perverse sexual desires. They traffic victims to directly abuse them or to have a stable of readily available victims. Jeffery Epstein fits this profile, a wealthy child abuser who set up a whole system to groom and abuse underage girls for himself and his associates. He wasn't hurting for money. His drive was sexual compulsion and exploitation.
The Federal High Court sitting in Asaba, Delta State, has set April 10 for sentence hearing in the case of a 43-year-old lady, Christiana Jacob Wadiale, popularly known as Christy Gold, who is being tried for allegedly recruiting, trafficking, and sexually exploiting underage girls in Dubai.
The UAE case of Christy Gold, a Nigerian woman who was a senior member of an organized human trafficking syndicate, notorious for the recruitment, trafficking, and sexually exploiting of underage Nigerian girls in Dubai, illustrates outright sadism. She allegedly tortured women who didn't earn enough, starving them, and even shoving hot chili paste into their genitals as punishment. The cruelty is the point. It cements their absolute dominance. Ideology or justification is another drive. Interestingly, some traffickers rationalize their behavior. They might view what they do as just business, or even convince themselves they are helping the victims earn money. Pimps often manipulate victims with a twisted form of affection. I love you, but you have to do this for us to survive. In one survivor's account, her trafficker, also her boyfriend, seduced her with love, then framed prostitution as a temporary sacrifice for their future together. He even set targets like, "We'll get engaged once we make $10,000. By making the victim think they're a team, traffickers mask the exploitation as a form of twisted mutual goal. A psychologist explains this phenomenon.
Traffickers often share traits with domestic abusers. They're master manipulators. They'll use love as a weapon, alternating between kindness and cruelty to confuse victims, a process known as trauma bonding. They enjoy the feeling of control. And when the commodity is sex, there's frequently a personal deviance at play, whether that's pedophilia, as with Epstein, or a general hypersexual sadism. Finally, the environment. The ease of making money and the low risk of punishment in some regions reinforces them. If someone can earn 6 figures a year by exploiting 5 or 6 women, and they perceive a low chance of getting caught, that's a powerful incentive for unscrupulous individuals.
Ultimately, traffickers, whether flamboyant playboys or hidden predators, are fueled by some combination of greed, lust, and the thrill of dominance. Wealth, fame, influence. These are qualities we often envy, but in the wrong hands, they become tools of coercion. High-profile traffickers exploit power structures that ordinary abusers can only dream of. Let's shine a light on how celebrity status and vast resources enable a particularly insidious form of trafficking and abuse. Consider Sean "Diddy" Combs, a hip-hop icon and business mogul. To the public, Diddy was a larger-than-life figure of success. That very image became a shield and a weapon. In private, Combs is accused of orchestrating a network of enablers and plans to fulfill his sexual whims. The indictment alleges he ran his own criminal enterprise since at least 2004, with employees and associates helping arrange women for abuse, cover up crimes, and intimidate witnesses. It's essentially the R. Kelly playbook in the context of a music empire. Use fame to attract victims, use wealth to silence them. One witness at Diddy's trial testified that as far back as 2012, Combs paid male sex workers up to $6,000 to perform sexual acts on his girlfriend Cassie while he watched and directed.
On the stand, she said that guys would climax on her and she would take the cum and rub it on Diddy's nipples. Was this happening in your sessions?
Well, so it is an assumption, right? So, obviously with the veil, there was a very deliberate attempt to hide his identity.
Yeah.
So they never had any interactions or even any outward conversation in my presence. So there was a routine where sometimes we'll be right in the middle of sex and he'll just stand up and walk out of the room. And she would take that cue and she would follow him out.
As charges put it, he leveraged his status to coerce women and used violence if they resisted. The threat wasn't a gun. It was the implicit, "I'm Diddy, I can make or break you. And if you tell anyone, who will believe you over me?" Jeffrey Epstein's case reveals a different aspect of elite exploitation, an old boys network of trafficking. Epstein wielded his wealth and connections like a spider web, ensnaring not just victims but accomplices. He cultivated an elite social circle and procured many women and underage girls for sexual abuse. He had recruiters, like Ghislaine Maxwell, who would approach vulnerable teens, often from poor neighborhoods near his mansions, and lure them with cash, gifts, or promises of modeling opportunities.
She told me about this man that she worked for. She called him her client, and he likes to receive massages, and he'll pay you several $100s for 30 minutes. She just kept making it seem like a really great opportunity and just kept sounding better and better. He has ties to the fashion industry. He's friends with a bunch of supermodels. I said, well, I don't have any massage experience. She said, it doesn't matter. He just likes young, pretty girls. I was broke, and it sounded like an opportunity where he could help me if he liked me. The appointment was around 11 or 12 in the afternoon. I had never seen anything like that before in my life. So I just went and sat down, and I was super nervous. Finally, he walks in with a towel wrapped around his body. I didn't know where I was. I wasn't really paying attention walking into the house. After the maid had shut the door, I felt trapped. So he lay face down on the massage table, where I very awkwardly began to massage him. I didn't know what I was doing, and I was like, this guy is gonna hate this. He asked me to take my clothes off. I was so scared, and I took my clothes off. He began to touch me aggressively.
For years, he continued his abuse seemingly above the law. It wasn't until 2019, amid public outrage, that the law caught up. Epstein shows how the rich and connected can create a gilded cage. His private island, private jet, and estates were luxurious prisons for the victims he shuttled around for high-profile friends. R. Kelly, a Grammy-winning R&B singer, provides a stark example of celebrity-enabled trafficking. Kelly's trial and conviction in 2021 revealed that he had, for decades, used his music career as a hunting ground for victims. He exploited teenage fans who idolized him, promising mentorship or a shot at stardom. He then imposed a cult-like regimen. Victims had to call him daddy, ask permission for basic actions, and were punished if they disobeyed.
He's like, take off your clothes. And he says it, with authority in his voice, not just, he's demanding me to do this. And I didn't take off my clothes because why would I? Just wasn't ready. Sex isn't something, I'm ready for.
Did you want to have sex with him?
No. He has this type of intimidation right off the bat, So I was just waiting for it to be over.
What happens after that? What sort of conversation did you guys have?
He comes over and he starts rubbing the side of my face. And he asked me how old I was. And I told him. And he's like, if you're really, 16 that you can tell daddy, right? And he was like, you just look about 14, 15, or 16.
The dark truth is, fame and wealth can be as effective as any chains or cages. They entrap victims in psychological prisons of glitz, fear, and isolation. But as these cases come to light, that illusion of untouchability is shattering. The more we recognize that a predator might be wearing a nice suit or have a hit song on the charts, the better we become at supporting victims who come forward. Headlines come and go, but the truest measure of this crisis lives in the people who endured it. In this chapter, we turn down the media noise and hand the microphone to Victoria, a survivor whose story reminds us that betrayal can wear the face of family.
I feel like something pretty terrible must have been happening to her when she was a kid and going through foster care maybe, or in juvie or out on the streets. And it seems like it took such a toll that instead of her viewing me as her daughter and her child, it seems like she saw me as a reflection of herself and just kind of poured all that shame and hatred into me. And that looked a lot like deliberately leaving me with people who were gonna do bad things to me. Some of the earliest memories that I have are, sorry.
It's okay, take your time. Do you look like your mom?
No, not at all. I'm glad. But some of my earliest memories of some of the things that happened to me with a lot of people throughout my childhood was smells and feelings and sights of blood, not full memories, right? But there'll be little things that trigger a little bit of a shred of a memory. But as I got older, it became a lot more clear to me what I was going to be expected to do with these people. And as I became more aware of it, I would push back because there's certain people, certain I don't know how to describe them, pedophiles that are good at making it seem like a treat. They're good at giving money or candy or food or clothes or toys and making you excited to be there and then shifting it. And then some people are just awful right off the get-go. And it led to a lot of confusion of why am I being left here? Because my understanding is they're babysitters or they're friends of mom, or she trusts me with these people. As I got older, that was an indicator to me that she was this was a choice that she was making to take me to these people. As a kid, I wasn't thinking oh, people are gonna call me a slut and think I'm promiscuous. As a child, I'm thinking, I don't know what this is, but it feels gross, it feels wrong. I know at least my friends don't wanna be naked around other people. And so given that comparison, it just felt like I was really fucking up and being gross, and it was my choice. And that over time, once these things stopped, that just kind of became like my understanding of how to interact with men.
One chilling realization is how trafficking can masquerade as normal interactions. A victim might appear to be a doting partner, an obedient employee, or an adventurous teen, when underneath lies fear and force. For example, how many people saw Diddy and Cassie on red carpets and assumed everything was fine? The public only saw a glamorous couple, not the alleged violence and coercion happening in private. This is a societal blind spot. We often default to, it's their personal life, must be consensual. Especially when the perpetrator is high status or beloved, we find ways to doubt the victim. But as we've shown, coercion can be psychological and subtle. Victims may not even recognize they're being trafficked because no one kidnapped them at gunpoint. The acquittal of Diddy doesn't erase the allegations. It highlights the difference between moral outrage and courtroom proof. Andrew Tate's case is another reflection point. He openly argued that because he didn't physically force women, he wasn't a trafficker. Some of his followers echoed that they're unable to see that lies and love fraud are coercive. Although the Tates have not been convicted of any crimes, and they are innocent until proven guilty, their case highlights how trafficking can work through invisible chains of manipulation rather than obvious violence. This contrast in perceptions is also seen in real legal outcomes. Ghislaine Maxwell, the high society accomplice of Epstein, was convicted in 2021 on multiple counts of sex trafficking minors, since her crimes involved overt grooming of children. By contrast, Sean Diddy Combs' case, involving adult women in a long-term relationship, ended with acquittal on trafficking charges. The jury did not view his conduct as meeting the legal threshold of trafficking. It forces us to ask an uncomfortable question. Are we as a society only recognizing victims who have visible shackles, while ignoring those bound by invisible ones? When the abused wears a friendly face or designer suit, do we hesitate to call it what it is? Society's tendency to victim blame or hold misconceptions. How often have we heard, "She knew what she was getting into. Why didn't she run?" Or, "Prostitution is a choice. Those girls just want money." These attitudes create blind spots where real trafficking victims fall through cracks, either not identified or not empathized with. But there is hope. Public awareness is growing. The fact that you, the viewer, have watched this far means you care and are helping peel back the blinders. The successful prosecutions of some high-profile traffickers send a message that no one is above the law. The narrative is shifting from sensationalized stranger danger to more truthful complexity. To the survivors watching, we see you, we hear you, and your story matters. To the audience, having taken this journey, you're no longer in the dark. And with that knowledge comes the responsibility and privilege to be part of the solution. If you see something, say something. If you're in trouble, reach out. Freedom is the right of every human being, and we are all entrusted with defending it. Thank you for watching.